I'm a lot less tolerant. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the March 13th meeting of the Pinelands Commission. March 13th meeting of the Pinelands Commission. We have a public media statement. Okay.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Pinelands Commission was given in compliance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act that provided notice to all municipal and county clerks in the Pinelands area and to the Secretary of State on December 18, 2014, and the Commission's officially designated newspaper until December 18, 2014, and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the Commission's office.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Ashman?
Here.
Commissioner Avery?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner DeBello?
Here.
Commissioner Erlin?
Here.
Commissioner Galetta?
Here.
Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Commissioner Janarone? Commissioner Lloyd? Commissioner McGlinchey?
Here.
Commissioner Prickett?
Here.
Commissioner Quinn?
Here.
Commissioner Rowan Green?
Here.
Commissioner Witt?
Here.
Okay. And Chairman Lobar.
Okay, we have a quorum. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda is adoption of the minutes which have been circulated. The first one is the January 30th, 2015 special commission meeting. Do you want to adopt these individually or together? Thank you.
Second.
But moved to second. Are there questions or comments on both sets of minutes? Seeing none, those in favor, aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Any other abstentions? With Commissioner Green's abstention, the minutes stand approved. The next item on our agenda is committee chair reports. I don't believe either committee met. Am I correct? I am correct. It's been a while since I did one of these meetings. Executive director report. Nancy.
Good morning. Okay. Municipal Council meeting met this past week. It was in Morris River. I think that's the farthest I ever get to drive. It's very dark and very far. They didn't have a quorum again. Sorry, Johnson. But they did have an interesting presentation on the Dallas Landing project. It's an archaeological project they're undertaking there. They managed, Cumberland County got a significant amount of money, so they're doing a big investigation, and that was actually pretty interesting. And they're still working on their quorum issues. We are beginning work on our FY16 budget. Our appropriation has maintained the same. Rumor has it there's an additional $30,000 in there for technology, which will be nice, but I haven't seen that in writing. So that work is starting, and you know, we will proceed slowly from here to July when we will finalize the FY16 budget. The short course is tomorrow at Stockton.
Over here.
How's attendance going?
We're going to have 500 people at least, and a lot of people are going to be signing up, morning up. So anyone here who wants to still go, you can register during the morning of the event. So it's better attendance than last year. And we're also going to see a lot more people who are in the younger generation who we tried to target this year.
So that's good. And the other thing to report from sort of Paul's end of the world is that we recently received 50,000 Pinelands National Reserve brochures that were paid for reprinting by the National Park Service. And I'm guessing we have a rapid plan to distribute our 50,000 brochures.
Well, yes, and we have them here. We also had another 50,000.
Everyone gets to take 1,000 home.
There's an additional 50,000 that went to Brendan Burns State Forest, so it's a total of 100,000 brochures. And so we made a couple minor adjustments to fix a few things that were outdated, such as our PO box and a couple other things.
What's the lifespan for these brochures? Is it something that will be outdated quickly, or?
Well, we wrote them in a way so that they wouldn't. That's why we try to avoid numbers of things, you know, because numbers have a way of becoming outdated, you know, how much land is preserved, things like that. So
it'll be good for
oh yeah,
a couple of years. Anyway. Yes,
and perhaps if you Joe can speak to this, once it's in the National Park Service library, there's always, they own it, and we have the ability to work with them to make changes, which is what we did to it, to make sure that it's all accurate. We try to avoid you know, circumstances where we know if we put something in there in a few years, it's going to be outdated.
Does the commission in their library have archives on the brochures and materials that have been distributed through the...
In our library, we have a library system as well. It's like a museum system where we scan in all of our books and other documents, historical things, software that we have to keep track of these things.
Is that open to the public or open?
Well, it is. I mean, it's not a Lend library though. But
when you say scan in, is it on the computer or is it accessible?
We have it on our own computer system where we scan it in. It's not like the Apple library where you scan the book and they take it out. People can always come in and review any of our documents, any of our historical documents. We have a lot of interesting things about the Jetport proposal and other things people from time to time come in to look at. So you do have that all docketed in.
Don't even say Jetport.
Sorry.
And with regard to the brochures, again, that was just a really good effort with the National Park Service. Had some money, found a way, so we're very grateful. That was a good, quick, easy project and had a good outcome. That's all I have, so
I wanted to mention, to bring you up to date on Hamilton, and recall last year we with them and put together a comprehensive plan for dealing with wastewater management in the town. It's going to take a couple of years to implement it. They're about halfway through the two major things they're doing is a land recharge system and an underground system. They're about half through the land system, and they're a little bit behind on that. They've had problems with equipment being delivered and some weather problems. They also, I need to note, and this is what the system's going to solve. We aren't there yet, but they had to go into the stream for a week last week because of the frozen ground and excessive water coming into their system. We knew that would occur. It will be only solved when both things implemented, with both the above ground and the underground system. So we're keeping track of it, and they're trying to keep us informed as well as they can. So we are watching that.
Well, is the engineering all done for the underground system?
They're going to start that in mid-April, and it's supposed to be finished by early September. They really have the incentive to get it done because it's underneath athletic fields and they want to use them in the fall. So the above ground one is the one that's somewhat behind, and that is not on the athletic fields or anything. That's out of the woods. But the engineering's all done. I'm not totally sure the finance is all in place, but they are committed to doing it. And I think by September, everything will be done, both the above ground and the underground. So next year at this time, we'll see how well it works. I mean, there's always a problem using an above ground system at this time of year too. Things tend to freeze. We're talking and they're working. The second thing I wanted to mention was that I think I mentioned before that FEMA got a lot of money to do advanced planning for the next round of emergency management. And one of the things they're looking at was cultural resources. And so they had a series of employees trying to help the state become totally up to date on all the inventories of cultural surveys, things like that. So they took all of our surveys, something like 4,800 of them, scanned them all. So they're now digital and we can have access to them. And then they mapped them all, both the positive and negative ones. The positive ones are obviously very important because that's where there's cultural resources. The negative ones can be used in something called a predictive model. You can tie in the negative finding to soils and different things like that and use it to perhaps predict where future things can be found. So we have some management to do getting this all in system so we can use it, but ultimately it will be used by Chuck's reviewers when they get new applications and things like that. So it's really a major achievement. It involves the State Museum, and the DEP, the Chippewa office, and us. And FEMA is doing all this for us at no cost. So.
How does that relate to how careful we were not to map anything?
Well, it's just so much.
Well, we do have maps, but they tend to be paper maps.
Yeah, I mean, we tried not to tell everybody where.
Well, this is an issue that comes in through Oprah. It's the same issue as threatened endangered species. Should you tell people where things are, because then they'll go out and collect them. So we do not release that information except to an applicant. It is not available to the general public.
Okay, thanks.
That's all I have.
Any other questions for Larry while he's there?
Yeah, I have a question about discharge in the winter. Is that a better time, if you have to discharge, I guess it's nitrogen waste, is it better in the winter than perhaps in the summer for the ecology?
I'm not sure. I'm not the scientist to answer that. They have, it's a daily need, so they have to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
The lagoons that they have on site can store maybe a month or a month and a half worth of flow. The situation right now is they're full and they're still being flowed. And they're after charging, so I'm not sure we have much choice.
No, I understand that. Yeah,
I
just
think most of the animals are shut down now, so perhaps it is better.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment about Hamilton. Hamilton did very well this year. This was the first time that they went into the stream. If it wasn't cold, we had very, very, very cold temperatures. We probably would have never been in the stream if we had normal March temperatures. With the extra 4 fields, I think that this is going to be a definitely good resolution to the problem. I don't think we're going to be in the same event when those 4 fields are recharging all year. So I'm very optimistic about this. I just want to let the commission know that, you know.
Maybe I didn't convey that.
I don't think you did.
That's what we're here for. Director Horder?
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. I just wanted to touch on a couple of items for updating. The staff's continuing to have multiple meetings with representatives of Woodford Township and the owners of Acco Raceway over the proposed expansion plans. The applicant's interested in expanding the parking capabilities. They're providing parking that they can accommodate. There are some issues we're dealing with, wetlands, wetland buffers, but we have had a series of meetings in an attempt to resolve the issue. Those discussions are ongoing. On February 25th, members of your staff, including myself, met with Jackson Township officials. It was a general coordination meeting. The township brought most of their township staff and all of their consultants in to the meeting just to discuss the general process, how it unfolds in the Pinelands, refresher from certificates of filing, and the planning board needing a certificate of filing to declare an application complete, and to how the approval process unfolds. I think it was beneficial. Some applicants were encountering difficulties in the bureaucratic process, and I think the meeting went well, and township officials seemed very receptive to the meeting. On February 24th, we met with township officials from Hamilton. Hamilton has plans for their airport. The airport is located out in an agricultural area. It's a small airport. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with its location. It's located north of the White Horse Pike, if that helps anybody geographically become oriented. They have expansion plans for the airport, improvement plans for the airport, but the issue at hand at the moment is proposed clearing of forest that's being required by the FAA to maintain a safe airport. I'm sure that they are not aeronautical terms that I just used, but we are trying to determine whether the proposed amount of clearing that's necessary for the safe landing of airplanes, particularly at night, how that fits into our regulations, and move that along as quickly as possible. Obviously, it's a public safety issue. We want to move quickly on it. We are waiting, and the last piece of information on that is we are waiting for some information from Hamilton officials, either directly or indirectly from the FAA that is directing them to do this work so that we can act quickly on the matter. And I just wanted to note yesterday that we had a meeting with Southampton Township officials to discuss their public works facilities. Some commissioners may remember this has been an ongoing discussion. The township acquired a building and some land, about 26 acres outside of the Pinelands area. I believe their plans have changed where they would like to locate their public work facilities. They'd like to locate them closer to their municipal building, which is up on the corner of Route 206 and Retreat Road. In our meeting, we identified 3 potential solutions where they could construct their public works buildings at the site of their existing public works facilities adjacent to their municipal building, and also another parcel that is adjacent to their municipal building that they have some interest in. So I think we've managed to address the public works building and facilities questions. At this point, the township is working on which of the 3 sites that they would prefer, and they're going to submit a sketch to the staff so we can provide them some further guidance on the matter. That's all I have.
Any questions for Director Warner?
I had one question. Apropos of the Hamilton Airport, is the safety concern because they're using bigger airplanes? Or different airplanes?
No, the safety concern seems to be basically just an issue, Commissioner, of trees continuing to grow.
Wouldn't that be terrible?
And growing into the approaches and the landings, I don't know the correct terms, the landing planes that have to be maintained.
Yeah, but it doesn't have anything to do
Correct.
with changing the class of the airport.
At the moment, it does not. The clearing of trees is an FAA safety issue for existing aircraft. There are proposed plans that ultimately may arrive here that are not here yet, may or may not include some proposal for additional facilities that would entail other types of aircraft, but that's not on the table at the moment.
Do they own the land at the end of the runway where they want to cut all the trees?
Well, yes and no.
Oh, that's one.
They own some of the, on the first phase of the tree clearing, they own the land. They do have a second proposal that's in the process, not with the commission at the moment, to propose to clear lands that are on the state forest to accommodate an additional taxiway. But again, I want to be clear that that is not in front of us at the moment. Those discussions are ongoing with other agencies.
And Harrison Ford's going to land there next year.
Well, he won't get tree clear.
Now, if I could, maybe I can help Candy a little bit. It's really the New Jersey Department of Transportation that mandates these rules and regulations under the Bureau of Aeronautics. It's not so much the FAA. And we've been notified about the Camden County Airport. It's out of the Pinelands, but the same problems exist, that you have trees that are growing in the runway end zones, this hazardous zoning thing that they adopted years ago. And in the sub areas, you know, as you approach the runways, I have to, as a local zoning officer, notify people that there's trees in there that exceed the height requirements. And I'm mandated under state statute to notify those people to have them cut down at a cost of about $3,000 per tree. And some of these residents have 3 or 4 trees on their property. And there's no grants, there's nothing available, and I have to be the one that breaks the news to them, and if they don't cut the trees down in a timely fashion, I have to take them to court.
So they're cutting trees, but they belong, I mean, the tree is on private
Property, and I have to tell them to cut them down because of the airport. And the trees were planted, probably started growing long before the airport was there. They don't really care. That's the way the rules are established.
The reason I asked the question is an airport near me changed its class and needed.
Yeah, but we're in the same situation. We're not changing the class of the airport. It still remains the same.
They've got the same
Runways
airport.
aren't extended, and you know, so much for state mandate, state pay. Yeah. Go ahead.
What is the class of the airport? I'm unfamiliar with it, and how is it utilized? Is it solely commercial? Is it?
I don't know the answers to those questions at the moment, Commissioner. I'll be glad to look into those. Maybe I clarify a little bit. So Hamilton has been discussing with the commission staff for multiple years proposals to upgrade facilities at their airport. I think Hamilton officials would like to do some additional development out at the airport and increase the capacity of that airport, but we do not have any application in before us. We do not have any firm proposal in before us. The only proposal at the moment that's in before us is actually request to do the safety clearing of trees. At some point, if Hamilton officials move forward with proposed facilities, buildings, increasing lengths of runway, that's not proposed at the moment, but any other types of facilities, we will keep the commission apprised of what they are doing. But I don't know that, it's a very tiny, in non-technical terms, it's a very small airport with minimal aircraft landing activities. I did ask the mayor and the township attorney about the night flights, which seem to be the primary issue, and they said they average about 1 to 2 a week. So,
I got a question. And, you know, this is for Commissioner Lynch. If the property owners were there with these trees before the airport, how come there's not some kind of, if it becomes a problem, at least their grandfather, and somebody has to help them with cutting those trees versus you taking them to court? There couldn't be some kind of negotiation with the town, county, whatever, that the cost for court would go to help them augment cutting the tree.
I'll follow your question a little bit.
You're mandating somebody to cut a tree that was there before the airport.
Yeah.
So if it becomes a problem for the airport, why doesn't the airport have to share in the cost, at least share in it?
Because the statute doesn't provide for that.
So it's the little guy against the big guy.
The airport's out of it. They have nothing to do with it. It's the DOT, Bureau of Aeronautics, that imposes these regulations. And they come down and do the inspection. They were down 4 years ago, and I wrote letters and just ignored it, you know, figuring out that they would go away, you know. They didn't. 4 years later, they raised their ugly head again, and here they are. Now I have to really push the envelope. So I got to notify the same people about the same trees. And this time I'm, you know, I'd be remiss in my duties if I didn't take them to court. And it's up to the judge. Once I take them to court, and then, you know, we can certainly cut them down, but we're not going to lean on the property.
Right. Yeah, I know it's not a pine, you know, a commission issue, but
But even if it was in the Pinelands, similar to what you're going through here, it doesn't matter. You don't have any choice.
well, we might be able to do something to help.
Commissioner, I just wanted to note in the Hamilton situation, Hamilton has ownership of all lands that they're currently proposing to do the tree trimming on, and Hamilton is also paying to have the trees trimmed on their land.
Yeah, so they own the ground.
Correct. So I just wanted to clarify that.
It actually looks like a coal scuttle as you go out. As you go away from the end of the runway, it goes up this way and out that way. And it changes if you have instrumental landing versus visual.
Right.
And there's a project underway in Ocean County now.
Yes.
Any other questions for the executive staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to permitting matters. There's no...
It's the other guy.
That's the other one.
There you go.
Every time you hit that button, it makes a noise, we all get like a shock.
I said it's been a while since. There's no Office of Administrative Law procedures to act on. There's no review of local approval. There is one public development project. For commission action, requiring commission. Is the resolution, anybody move second the resolution? I'll move it. Second. But moved and seconded. Questions or comments on the resolution?
I have a question. We're talking about the Egg Harbor Township resolution.
Correct.
Yeah, I have a question about whether the pump station was built and is being moved because of pollution, or it hasn't been built. I'm a little confused by the sentence there. It says, due to soil contamination, vicinity of the previously approved pump station, leads me to believe that it has already been built.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Sure, I'll be glad to answer that.
Thank you.
The commission approved a sanitary sewer pump station. That pump station was not constructed. As the applicant began to evaluate its construction plans, they determined based on existing information that's available at the FAA facility, that there's contamination in the area. Because their construction activities would probably involve pumping to de-water, they decided that they would move the proposed pump station to a different location. So the one that was originally approved by the commission was in fact not constructed, and this was instead of that application.
And that was in 1987? Maybe not.
No, the original approval of the commission?
Yes.
Yes, on the report on November 12th, 2010 is when the commission approved it.
Okay.
What does cause confusion is you're looking at the application number that says 1987, and then if you'll notice it in our own way, this is phase 60. That means we've had 60 different applications on that parcel, but that's just our own internal application control numbers.
Thanks for clearing that up for me.
Sure.
Other questions on the public development application? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution stands approved. Item B, planning matters. We have no municipal ordinances. We have no other resolutions, and we have no CMP amendments. At this point, we're at item 5 on the agenda, which is public comment on agenda items and pending public development applications. Is there any member of the public that's Mr. Akers?
Good morning, Commissioners. Fred Akers from the Greater Harbor Watershed Association. I'm also a Buena Vista Township resident, and I'm going to comment today regarding the public development application for Buena Vista. And I'm sorry to say that it's so complicated, and there's so many, it's like smoke and mirrors have been going on with this for so long that I can't really comment on the merits of the application because it keeps changing, and I'm sure they are. So I'm going to just talk about the process a little bit and comment. It's going to be up to you to figure out what's best here. I have to leave it in your hands because I can't really say at this point. But what I did is I reviewed the management report information that I had through September. And I passed that out so you could get an idea of the pattern that this has taken for a number of years now. And it's basically trying to correct violations in Buena Vista Township. And I wanted to bring in a historical piece to kind of frame this. And I'm going to read, this is one of Paul Leakin's press releases from August 14, 2009. He does a nice job with these. It's titled, "The Pinelands Commission to provide $100,000 to help design a community wastewater treatment system in Buena Vista Township." And the application that you're going to be dealing with there is kind of related to this. So it says, during its meeting today, now this is August 14, 2009, during its meeting today, the Pinelands Commission authorized an agreement to contribute $100,000 to help design a community wastewater system in Buena Vista Township, Atlantic County. The parties to the agreement are the Commission, Buena Vista Township, and Atlantic County Utilities Authority. Under the agreement, the Pinelands Commission's contribution will help defray costs the ACUA will incur to determine the feasibility of building a community wastewater system to serve the current and future needs of Richland Village redevelopment area in Buena Vista. This agreement will serve as a model for using community wastewater systems that can handle wastewater demands associated with rural commercial development while protecting Pinelands water qualities, said John Stokes, Executive Director of the Commission. The Commission appreciates the Atlantic County Utilities Authority's willing cooperation to participate in this special project. Buena Vista lacks an adequate wastewater disposal method to serve the Richland Village redevelopment area. The approximately 193-acre village is located off Route 40 and is currently 50% developed. An on-site community wastewater treatment system would have positive benefits on water quality in an area currently served by on-site septic systems, while providing opportunities for economic growth, such as the modest expansion of businesses and limited residential development. Among other things, the agreement calls for the Commission to help the Township identify permit requirements related to the installation of a wastewater system and likely financial resources to help offset project design costs. So I'll stop there. So the Commission was giving a $100,000 grant to Buena Vista Township to study and eventually build a wastewater treatment system, a package treatment plant for the Richland redevelopment area. Meanwhile, Buena Vista Township did numerous public developments without getting any permission from the Commission, including a railroad siding and parking lots and other impervious cover. And the whole thing was turned out after time to be kind of an illusion. It went away. The $100,000 grant was eventually withdrawn. Some money was spent for that. So that's the background, and I don't know how this is all going to work out. And if you look at the management plan, or the report there, it's really kind of sad for the staff to have to be spending all of the time going back and forth with Buena Vista Township to try to get their questions answered and figure out what their, get answers so that they can do this right. And public is giving the staff a hard time because they don't know what's going on. They're not happy with it. So it's almost like there's no good conclusion here. And basically what it gets down to in my mind is here's a township, a municipality that really wasn't trustworthy. And the Commission went out of its way to work with this town. And now to correct these violations, the Commission has to stuck having to trust the same engineer and the same mayor from back in 2009 to fix these violations. So I don't, you'll probably see me 5 years from now saying, remember that stormwater basin you required them to make as a condition of their violation? Well, they never made it yet. Hopefully I'll be wrong. But one other comment is I haven't seen this going before the Policy and Implementation Committee to vet it for the full Commission. And maybe it's complicated enough that should be something that would be useful for the P&I Committee to get a presentation on it. So anyways, those are my comments. It's more process related. I wish us all luck on this one.
Thank you. Chuck, did you have a response?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Akers. It may be helpful for the Commission just spend a moment, an overview of what's being proposed and what is being commented on in this particular instance. I apologize, we made this slide very quickly yesterday in an effort to provide just an overview of what's happening out on the site. I just want a couple of comments at least that help, in my mind, to keep issues separate to evaluate the development application that may be in front of the Commission at their April Commission meeting for consideration. The Richland Village redevelopment plan is not part of the application that's before you. The status of that redevelopment plan, what that redevelopment plan may or may not say, the issue of sanitary sewer, provision of a community wastewater treatment plant, have all been issues that have been discussed at the Commission meeting and raised concerns from members of the public. But I just want, for clarification purposes, that issue is not before the Commission in this particular application, at least in my opinion. Tangentially, it may be in some people's opinion. But this is strictly an application where the Township has filed and completed to resolve a violation in Buena Vista Township. Again, the slide is just trying to give you a rough depiction of what the application is proposing. You see Route 40 runs through the heart of Richland Village. This proposed development is located in Pinelands Village area in Buena Vista Township. The development that you see, we tried to highlight it in the purple. The development has already occurred, other than for a couple of items that I'll mention. There are 5 small parking areas that are proposed. And I don't have the pointer. Oh, thank you. Excuse me, I'll sit back down. 1, 2, those are both informal parking areas that have been stoned. They were dirt parking areas in the past. They have been surfaced with stone. They may or may not have been expanded slightly. We don't have that information, but the application has come in as if they are new parking lots proposed to be surfaced. There is some minor parking proposed in this area, about 2 different parking areas with a total, I think, of 5 parking spaces. And there are 2 parking areas proposed in that particular area. And again, it's not designated, so it's about 10 parking spaces. Since we don't have a regulation that really limits the number of parking spaces, in this case, the applicant did not tell us how many cars it's capable of parking in these informal and formal parking areas. My guesstimate would be based on ratios that we've used in the past, somewhere between 100 and 150 cars. We will ask the applicant to clarify the number of cars that can be parked there as part of the application as it comes before you. But I did want to note that we don't have a regulation that limits the number of cars that can be parked on the parcel. Our regulation deals with, if you do propose parking, you have to address stormwater management for that parking. Some of the other improvements one of the main improvements is the proposed basin down at the south end of the parcel. That'll be the stormwater management basin that's going to hold the stormwater from the proposed project. There are, again, a couple of improvements have been made out here. They located a railroad car. They did some improvements in the railroad right-of-way to put in a new siding for this tourist train so it can get back out to the railroad tracks. And then the last thing I just wanted to note is that the Commission had previously approved a sidewalk project up along Route 40. We've discussed this before. The township did not install the stormwater management swales that were required, and/or they did install them and they were subsequently filled in. We're not exactly sure which of those two statements is accurate. However, we've required that the stormwater management from a portion of this sidewalk project be managed. The applicant is proposing a small stormwater management swale right in the area that I'm pointing right off of Route 40, where the stormwater from those sidewalks will go. I'll stop and just summarize saying, yes, the development is a violation of your rules. Yes, it's taken a long time to resolve, and the application before you, the application that will be before you in April, assuming once we review all the public comments, if other issues aren't raised, will be to seek approval for the development that's already occurred and for the proposed stormwater management facilities. And I'll stop with that, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Is there a railroad track there now?
Yes, there is.
So trains or train cars actually move past the station at this point?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that one, Commissioner. The tourist train that they have does, but are you asking me if commercial rail traffic?
No, tourist. I just can't see really can't see the track from here. But
yes, there is track.
It's just the easement.
Yes, there is track
there. That's the answer to my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Mr. Jackson. How is this associated with some of the pictures we've seen of flooding? Is that on this picture? Or is that in a different area?
That is actually a different area.
Okay.
But I'd like to touch on it briefly because we've received a significant amount of public comment from one individual who is very concerned with this matter, so I think it's appropriate to touch on that matter. The other portion of the sidewalk that was developed with our approvals, excuse me, let me start again to be clear. We approved the sidewalk project on Route 40. The application that we're talking about right now that you see a slide is going to provide stormwater management facilities for half of that sidewalk project. The other half of the sidewalk project raised the same issue where the stormwater management facilities that were approved by the Commission were not installed. The applicant subsequently addressed that by directing the stormwater management to an existing stormwater management basin that serves a firehouse. The applicant demonstrated that there was capacity in that basin at the firehouse for the stormwater from a portion of the sidewalk project. And now concerns have been raised of whether or not the firehouse basin is functioning proper. And we have been writing and working with the township over whether or not that basin is functioning correctly. The township last advised us, the township engineer and the design engineer for the firehouse basin, that they believe that the existing firehouse basin is substantially meeting the standards that it was designed for. There's disagreement that continues on that issue on the local level.
Okay, on the local level, what do you mean, by the engineer or by somebody else?
I think it's probably fair for me to say between municipal officials and residents.
Okay, and then we've seen a lot of pictures.
We receive lots of pictures.
Okay, so...
And each time we receive pictures, not each and every time, but we do a site inspection. If we see, again, we're on now, I want to be clear, we're on a different application, not the one we're discussing that's subject to public comment today. But each time we receive reports in on the basin, we contact the township to try to understand what the issue is.
Okay, because the thing that's kind of making me look at this and saying if those parking lots are now stone and they're going to be paved, and the basin is that uphill or downhill? Where the basin's going to be?
Well, I want to clarify that the parking areas are stone.
Right.
A couple of them will be paved.
Okay.
But the majority of the parking is stone. I don't know the topography, the question that you're asking me, of whether the basin's uphill or downhill. I believe it's downhill, and this is overland flow. But if you'll allow me a moment, I'll check with the reviewer to see if inlets and piping are proposed.
No inlets or piping.
So yes, it is downhill,
Great,
and the applicant has demonstrated that the stormwater from this project, in your staff's view, conditioned upon reading all the public comments and reviewing the public comments, has demonstrated that the volume of stormwater to be generated by this project is going to reach that basin and meet the commission's stormwater standards.
So when we get things and read them, that kind of doesn't seem to bear out in reading it, the town's issue, and then the residents' issue, how do we as a commission resolve an understanding of that? How do we get our head wrapped around what's really happening?
Well, in my opinion, and I'm sure others have their opinion, that the role of the commission is to judge each individual commissioner, is to evaluate the report if and when it reaches you in April, and the staff's decision on the matter, our response to public comment. The commissioners will have a chance to review public comments and make a judgment based on the information that's available to them. You're really faced with an issue in any application where a professional engineer is designing a stormwater management project, demonstrating that he meets the commission standards, and keep in mind that there are many municipal standards that are not commission standards for stormwater, but demonstrating that they're meeting the commission staff's regulations with respect to the amount of stormwater getting into the basin, the permeability rate of the stormwater basin, the seasonal high water table under the basin, and they are demonstrating conceptually, and I think that's an important word, that the basin should function. Now the question that always arises is, did the professional engineer that designed it appropriately? Did the contractor that construct it appropriately? There are safeguards in place for all of these things, but there's no fail-safe guarantee. So to get back to try to answer your question, I think the commissioners individually have to judge the information and make a determination on the staff's recommendation.
So does that mean eventually I have to go to the site and do my own homework? Because if, as a commissioner, sitting here hearing what you said, then not talking to the engineer, I only get the engineer's paperwork. But I hear many residents come in and complain about flooding. So, I mean, when you're living it, it's different than when you're designing it on the board. Two different things. So I don't know how to resolve, is it percolating properly? Or not?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Chuck. Chuck, the applicants that had flooding, the residents, there was no performance bonds associated with that property, but on this site, would there be performance bonds associated with the engineers?
Typically,
Excellent.
the question that, if you would have asked me this in normal circumstances, in private development applications, sure, there's performance and maintenance bonds posted all the time to ensure that the basin's constructed appropriately and then it's maintained appropriately. The question that's posed now is, does a municipality post a bond, performance bond and a maintenance bond against itself for construction of the basin? I don't know the answer to that. I would think so, but I just don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
I think the ultimate fail-safe here is the residents talking to their municipal officials about problems with municipal projects, because that seems to get everybody's attention, based on my experience.
But I think they've at least they've portrayed themselves. I think the residents who have come before the commission to lodge these complaints have had no cooperation or collaboration with their municipal government, which is why they're here, I think.
I understand, Commissioner, and I think the value of coming here is that Chuck then has his staff contact the municipal officials to get an explanation of why people were here and why the project is not functioning as conceptual design.
It puts our staff in a very complicated position and frustrating position to find some resolution when really it's on the onus of the municipality. Yeah.
Well, I do want to comment that I understand the frustration of the public that contacts us. Commissioner, you're absolutely right. It puts us in a very difficult situation to try to manage details of a project that aren't subject to our standards.
Right.
And to somehow factor in, and I'm going to use a hypothetical situation, somehow factor in past behavior or future behavior of any given municipality or the capabilities of their professional staff. When our staff is asked to do those things, it puts us in a very difficult situation. I think the commission, in my opinion, faces this not as directly as in this particular application, but in every application you approve, the commission staff is reviewing it and doing a due diligence review of the engineering work that's submitted. But there is no guarantee that the design engineer, even if they're a professional engineer, in whatever municipality or whatever project it is, that there won't be a problem with it. And every time you vote on an application, I think you're acknowledging that possibility. You'll just have to weigh the situation of each application that's before you, and the information that you have would be my suggestion in casting a vote on it.
Are there other comments on this matter? Any other?
Thank you, Mr. Mullen.
You're welcome.
Any other public comments on pending public development applications? Identify yourself for the record.
Denise Warren, Jackson Township Environmental Commissioner. In my township, I am tasked with reviewing the stormwater management reports for any development that comes to us. And viewing this, and I know back in 2004 when the state passed the new regulations, excuse me, every basin is supposed to have a TR55 associated with it, which gives you the calculations for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm. And based on the impacts surrounding that property, that has to be calculated in to the plan itself. And what I'm seeing, I don't know what type of basin has been designed, and whether it's a wet type of basin, a swale, which you've suggested, or a dry basin. And that has to be reviewed. And that should be incorporated in the township's ordinances as well. And as you as commissioners should be aware of that, because you are the umbrella to all of these townships that are under the Pinelands territory. If they are dealing with flooding, then obviously it is not designed correctly. You have a problem with the runoff. And maybe the basin needs to be sifted, maybe it needs to be cleaned out, or it just was not designed to capacity. Sometimes they don't align themselves with the development around it, and they just put the basin in and feeling that it's correct. We are dealing with some situations in Jackson Township presently with basins that have not been correctly designed. And that causes groundwater contamination and other issues that are problematic. And groundwater is important because it moves slowly. It's not anything that you see. So especially down in this vicinity, I know that there's a lot of wetlands down in that area, and they need to be concerned with that. The township needs to focus on how these basins are designed, and it needs to be carefully questioned by the engineering staff. And they need to perform and to show that the calculations are correct. I've seen applicants that came in, and believe me, I read every single application that comes in, every report, and I've seen cut and pasted. And I've asked calculations for some of these retention basins, and you know, the engineer will say, oh, they're fine. But why are they failing? Because it was cut and pasted. And based on, it may be, you know, depending on the size of the development, it doesn't fit to, you know, capacity, so it will overflow. And with the overflow, you don't know what what could be going into the groundwater, particularly with the type of sandy soils that we deal with in this area. We need to really be careful with that. I don't know what your township has, if they adopted these, stormwater regulations.
Can you address
or
the
best
commission?
Excuse me?
Please, could you address the commission?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But I know the townships were required, and every township has to also write a report back to the state, to ensure that, their stormwater management is being handled correctly. With what we're seeing after Sandy, I mean, I know these are inlets, some of these developments, but because of the faulty or not properly designed basins, we're dealing with an overflow, we're dealing with other types of contaminants. So this is really key. This is something that you guys need to really be well aware of, whether it's in your jurisdiction or not. And it is your jurisdiction because you are the Pinelands Commission, and these townships are part of it. As long, I know our township, Jackson, is partly into in the Pinelands regulations. I do have one other question about the airport. Is there something that they were talking about in Jackson Township about that? Is that Lakehurst Naval Base?
No, that's the FAA facility in Egg Harbor.
Oh, in Egg Harbor, okay, because I thought you said something with Jackson Township. Or Ocean Township, or Ocean County, excuse me. It was
Ocean County, that's in Berkeley.
Berkeley, right, okay.
It's been there for a long time.
No, I know that too, and I'm well aware of what's going on at the base too, because I did the maps for that.
Good.
Thank you, but
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public comments and public development. There are 2 ordinances listed not requiring commission actions and commissioner have a plan on either of those ordinances. Manchester Township Ordinance 14022 and Cumberland Township Ordinance 15-2014. See, no student got off easy today. At this point, we come to the agenda on general public comment. Where we begin, I'd like to ask the executive director, do we have any new information on the England pipeline issue?
No.
To ask the councilor, do we have any resolution of the litigation?
Yes, earlier.
And we're going to do...
Oh,
Not on the South Jersey gas. So we have nothing new on either one of those issues. Thank you. Members of the public, do we have a list, Paul, by any chance? But we all were surprised. Richards? Please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning. First name is Sydney. A PTA member as well as a Tabernacle resident. And first of all, I wish everybody a happy Friday the 13th. We hope it's good luck for everybody. So far, so good. I have a question. I guess I would have wanted to direct this to Mr. Lobauer, who's not here today. I just wanted to know if there has been any action, discussion, either sidebar or direct regarding his concept for the ad hoc commission on waivers and MOAs.
I'm glad you asked that, because you called me last night and told me what to say.
Right,
He is in the process of making appointments and filling slots based on his concept of who should serve. He has a few openings left that he's talking to people about, seeing their willingness to serve. So he is making progress, but it is not complete yet.
So yeah, then I would take that he is putting together his plan, his committee members, and then that will be brought to P&I or to the full commission?
However the chairman designates it. I think it's a separate ad hoc committee. It would not be part of P&I. It would meet separately.
No, I meant, would he bring it to P&I first before the full commission?
I don't believe so. I think he has the authority to make those appointments under our bylaws.
And then I
guess the statute.
Then I appreciate your information on that. And then I guess as just a follow-on, Mr. McGlinchey had requested a possibility of an ad committee. Is anything happening with that?
That was going to be discussed at the P&I committee meeting, which was canceled.
Okay, so it will be discussed at the next one then?
If that's what the chairman wants.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Fred, you're up again.
Thanks again, Fred Akers, Great Park Watershed Association. I attended the land rally on Friday, and there was a presentation that I went to see about water conservation in Hamilton. And it was a very impressive presentation where, you earlier talked about the wastewater issues in Hamilton, but one of the activities that they're trying to do is to reduce their water use, which then reduce their need to treat wastewater. If they don't use as much, they don't have to treat as much. So they've done some things, education outreach campaign with the residents. But one of the big thing that they did is they changed the rate structure. So they had a rate structure that actually, the more you use, the less you paid. And they have since changed that, and that has dramatically reduced water consumption. So it's pretty cool what they're doing there, and so I report that out to you. Thanks.
Thank you. That completes the list. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the commission on a Pinelands matter? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section. There's a resolution to retire into closed session.
Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act provides that a public body such as the Pinelands Commission may meet in closed session to discuss any pending or anticipated litigation as well as matters pertaining to attorney-client privilege. Whereas the Commission desires to retire to closed session and discuss such litigation matters, now therefore be resolved that the Commission shall at this time meet in closed session to discuss Murphy versus Medford and PPA versus Pinelands Commission. The substance of the closed session will be disclosed publicly only when it will not impede the state's ability to participate in litigation or breach the attorney-client privilege.
There's also a personnel item that needs to be discussed in closed session.
We don't know if it's me.
Over the council.
Investigation.
there's a need to address a personnel.
Okay. I'll move the resolution.
Second.
Questions, comments on the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We stand in closed session.